And now I'd like you to know that there is at least one member in the Congress that isn't going to rationalize the death of 24 children.
I haven't tried to rationalize the death of children, Congressman. I feel more strongly about it than you will ever know.
I cannot comment on an ongoing investigation.
You're not conducting the investigation. You're not a judge, and you're not an investigator. You're an investigatee.
It appears probably about every person who touched the ball presumably fumbled it at one time or another.
Today in Washington, Waco becomes a political battlefield.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
The hearings dragged on all day and into the evening as the House Judiciary Committee began the public phase of its investigation into what happened and why at the Branch Davidian compound outside Waco, Texas. It was at times confrontational, as when Stephen Higgins, director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, tried to avoid answering questions by noting that there is an ongoing investigation. It took an angry Texas congressman on the committee to remind Higgins that he was one of those being investigated. At other times, the hearing turned emotional, as when Attorney General Janet Reno recalled her feelings late on the night of April 19th, the day the compound burned to the ground. "I don't think," she said, "I've ever been so, I guess lonely is the word." But for the most part, the exchanges between the committee and law enforcement officials were respectful. As Nightline correspondent Chris Bury reports, the investigations continue in Washington and in Waco.
In the rubble near Waco today, forensic experts were still sifting through the ashes and bones at the painstaking pace of an archaeological dig. By this afternoon, they had recovered 53 bodies and identified only 3 of them. But the forensic work has so far yielded few answers, and in Washington, another political excavation got underway to find out facts and assign blame.
It was my call, and I made it the best way I know how.
Before a largely sympathetic House Judiciary Committee, Attorney General Reno once more shouldered the responsibility and stood up to the heat of Michigan Congressman John Conyers.
This is a profound disgrace to law enforcement in the United States of America. And you did the right thing by offering to resign. And now I'd like you to know that there is at least one member in the Congress that isn't going to rationalize the death of 24 children.
I haven't tried to rationalize the death of children, Congressman. I feel more strongly about it than you will ever know. But I have neither tried to rationalize the death of 4 ATF agents, and I will not walk away from a compound where ATF agents have been killed by people who knew they were agents and leave them unsurrounded.
Reno said she asked herself every day if things could have been handled differently.
I considered,
You considered a lot of options.
4 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up thinking, well, why can't we bring somebody down on a helicopter and come through a roof or something like that?
The Attorney General testified she rejected other options, including tunneling under the compound, because they were too dangerous. But one of Reno's main rationales, the fatigue of the hostage rescue team, drew some criticism.
We realize that we have one hostage rescue team, and fatigue should never be a factor in our decision-making.
But the toughest questions of all dealt with the original raid by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Did its leaders go ahead, as one ATF agent has already sworn in court, knowing that the Davidians knew they were coming? Director Stephen Higgins did not have a clear answer.
I don't believe, and I'm confident there's not a single leader in ATF that would knowingly and purposely lead his agents into an ambush situation. All of our leaders and people who were there that day, that all of them will have a fair opportunity to give their statements and be judged on their actions that day.
And tonight, Texas Congressman John Bryan grilled Higgins relentlessly on who tipped off the media the day of the initial raid.
Yes or
I
no?
th-
It's
I
just
think-
a very
I-
simple question.
yeah,
Yes or no?
I
Did
think there's-
somebody
well-
at the BATF
Yes.
notify the press in advance of the raid? Please don't repeat my question to me. Just answer the question.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Yes, I think there's evidence which indicates that someone did.
The frustration with Higgins was so evident that during a break, committee chair Jack Brooks gave the ATF director a bellyful. He thought the cameras weren't rolling.
Higgins, you know what I'd have done? The first night, I'd have run everybody off. Quietly put a bomb in that damn water tank. Put tear gas in there. If they wanted to shoot, kill them when they came out. If they didn't want to shoot, put them in a paddy wagon. Been over by 12:30. Now that's what Brooks would have done.
Back at ground zero, meanwhile, the questions concentrated on the cause of the fire that consumed the compound in just 45 minutes. A team of outside arson investigators supported the FBI claim that cult members intentionally set the fire.
This fire started in the interior of the building in at least 2 separate locations at approximately the same time.
But some of the 9 survivors have insisted all along the fire started when FBI tanks knocked over kerosene lanterns.
Well, what's the cause of the fire? Tanks.
And the survivors talk about a fire that raged down the hallway. They talk about the pandemonium inside, about how the people were trapped inside. And they all talk about how there was no effort or plan to start a fire.
And lawyers also raised doubts today about the independence of the outside arson investigators.
Why in the world did they bring in, as chief of this investigating team looking into the fire, a fellow who had been on an ATF joint task force for 8 to 10 years out of the Houston office of the ATF, the office that planned and executed the raid?
The other big outstanding question is how the cult members died. 5 of the first 12 autopsy reports cite gunshot wounds. At least 5 others, smoke inhalation. The conclusions may be in short supply, but the blame game is well underway. Late today, Treasury Secretary Benson issued a statement saying he was deeply troubled by conflicting statements about the raid. In tomorrow's editions, the New York Times quotes administration officials as saying that means the almost certain ouster of ATF Director Stephen Higgins. This is Chris Bury for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, we'll be joined by 3 of the nation's top experts in hostage negotiations and crisis management.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Ford Motor Company.
At Ford Motor Company, we're already building vehicles that meet California's strict emission standards for the late 90s. We're the first U.S. manufacturer to build a car with CFC-free air conditioning. And we'll soon have a fleet of electric vehicles on the road. For us, designing quality cars and trucks means keeping an eye on the big picture.
At Ford, we understand that the quality of the environment is one of our greatest responsibilities.
Ford Motor Company, quality is job one. It's working.
Dad, could you leave the door open a crack?
How's that?
Could you check the closet one more time?
Nothing here.
Are you sure there's nothing under my bed?
No monsters here. Okay?
Okay.
Good night, buddy.
Dad?
Yeah?
Could you leave the hall light on?
That's my dad. And that's Mom. Dad's got an idea. A way to get rid of all the grody garbage that's polluting the world. He's invented a big rocket ship to shoot all the garbage into outer space. Mom's not sure. But Dad says his invention will save the world.
There's an easier way to save the world. Recycle. For your free recycling action guide, write Recycle. Environmental Defense Fund, 257 Park Avenue South, New York, New York.
To stop a friend from drinking and driving, don't create a scene. Create a diversion.
You all set?
Yep.
Got your car keys?
We're right here.
Pit stop?
You know what? I'm okay.
No, let's go. Car keys?
Car keys.
Yeah.
They're right here. What happened to them? No. I had them. They were here. They were right here.
They'll turn up, and when they do, Mike will hang on them for us.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. I'll call a cab.
Take the keys, call a cab, take a stand. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Looks like a great vacation, right? These aren't tourists, they're powerful members of Congress. And who's picking up the tab? Lobbyists. What do they want in return? Primetime Thursday.
We asked 3 men who tracked the standoff in Waco to watch today's hearings and analyze them for us. Frank Bowles is a former chief hostage negotiator for the New York City Police Department. He joins us from our New York bureau. Noel Cook is a former Pentagon official who specialized in counterterrorism and international security. He joins us now in Washington. Brian Jenkins is a specialist in security and terrorism and an executive with Kroll Associates. He joins us from our Miami bureau. Let me begin with you, Brian. I know you watched the hearings. What, if anything, did you learn? Sort of tick off the top 3 points, if you would.
Well, I think clearly the officials on the scene saw it as a hostage episode. I think it's clear from the account that they considered many options and indeed discarded some of those because of the danger that it presented to the children who were the principal hostages. I would say the other factor would be that their basic strategy was one of maintaining pressure without provocation, and that they saw their final step, the April operation, not as a final step, but rather simply as another incremental step in a gradual strategy.
All right, Frank Bowles, let's pick up with that first point. If it was perceived as a hostage situation, in your opinion, did they proceed properly?
Well, I think it should have continued on because, as Brian indicated, they were dealing with this as a hostage situation, and they went for 51 days as a hostage situation. But if we can now skip to number 3 of Brian Jenkins, where he said they were going to try to use the chemical agents as an incremental step toward dealing with this particular situation. I think once you get into a violent course of action, and chemical agents is one of the 3 violent courses of action. Chemical agents, the use of sharpshooters, or the use of a direct rescue attempt. Once you embark on that, you can't say, time out, I want to now go back and talk. You're committed to that course of action.
I guess one of the questions, Noel Cook, is not so much what the law enforcement officials perceived the situation to be, but what the people inside perceived the situation to be, especially when the tanks came in and started knocking down the walls, and then the chemical agent, the tear gas, was used.
I think if you were inside that building, you would take the loudspeakers saying, "This is not an assault. Don't worry about anything. We don't mean to hurt you. But if you'd like to come out, this is an opportunity to come out." And at the same time, a tank is taken down the side of your house. It's very difficult to square those 2 circumstances and to be mollified by what you hear over the loudspeaker. And so I think I'm concerned with this question that takes us back to the beginning of whether this was a hostage barricade situation. And if so, and it justified the use of the FBI's hostage rescue team, if they believed that it was a hostage situation, why was it treated as something that had to be concluded very quickly? They've told us that the hostage rescue team was becoming fatigued. We have other hostage rescue teams in this country that could have been used. The military has 2 very good ones, both of which trained the FBI's hostage rescue team. So it does not appear, as we went along, that we were very far from improvising a strategy on a day-to-day basis.
Brian, let me rephrase the initial question that I asked you. To what degree do you think that today's hearings have at least begun to put to rest some of the criticism?
Oh, I think today's testimony, and in particular the detailed account of the thinking and planning of the events given by FBI official Floyd Clark will go a long way toward diffusing a lot of the criticism.
Well, I have to disagree with you a little bit there. You know, when they talk about all these different kinds of plans that were put together, I have the feeling that a lot of the situation that took place may have come from some bureaucratic system where, hey, you guys have been down there for 51 days. What the heck are you guys going to do? How long are you going to stay there? I don't think it came from the very top, and I know it didn't come from the bottom, but I think it may have come from somewheres in the middle.
I think I would agree with Frank on that. I think the unfortunate thing is that this administration is just coming into place. It doesn't have all the players in place. It has no idea of the capabilities at its disposal. And so at the top level, they're at the mercy of what they're being told by the bureaucracy. And I don't think that there was any crisis management structure in place. There's no evidence that there was as the way this thing unfolded.
Frank, let me come back to you for a moment. When you're talking about at the mid-level, be a little more precise. If the president is at the top and the hostage rescue team is on the ground down at the bottom, whom do you consider to be at the middle? Janet Reno, the FBI director, the head of the ATF? Who's the middle?
It may not even have been the director, but somebody under the director, somebody in a position who would be feeding the director information, somebody who is high enough up in the structure. And it may not have been in the FBI. It may have been in the administration. But having worked and having recognized the pressures that sometimes can come, not after 51 days, but after perhaps closing down the FDR Drive and the Manhattan Bridge for about 7 hours, I know that in the incidents we've had in New York, that the pressure on the incident commander was tremendous. Though nothing was specifically said in that particular job, the pressure there created a tremendous amount of stress on the people involved. And in that particular job in New York, we did wind up losing 2 hostages.
And what are the earmarks that you see down in Waco or that you recognize that cause you to believe that the same kind of thing happened here?
Because they were going on for 51 days. They said they had all the patience in the world. This would end when the job was over. And all of a sudden, on April 19th, it ended because the decision was made that they had to do something. In one instance, they say it was because of the children, and the next thing you hear that the incidents that happened toward the children happened a long time ago. Of course, you always have to be concerned, and that you always must be in a position to make a rescue in the event someone does start to harm the innocent people on the inside.
Well, the only thing we have, though, from today's testimony by way of why not wait longer was the comment made by the Attorney General that waiting longer was not only futile but potentially dangerous. Now, the case for danger has to be made.
All right, let me just make an artificial break at this moment because I want to pick up on precisely that point. Whichever one of you wants to pick up on it when we come back, and we will be back in just a moment.
I'm a manufacturer's rep, and I'm here meeting a client for the first time. He's a little nervous that I'm spreading myself too thin. I've got clients in 5 other states, so I'm here to reassure him. We all carry SkyTel, so you can reach me whenever you need me. All you have to do is dial my personal 800 number. You'll hear my voice, and you can record a message, and this will notify me. When I play back your message, I'll know exactly what you need.
So you're covering 5 states in just one phone number?
Just one phone number.
I'm impressed.
To talk about the SkyTel system and what it can do for your company, call 1-800-SkyTel.
I think he's feeling better now.
What kind of cars are they going to give us?
Get a Mark 8, you're going to get a Sport.
Each year, a shipment of school supplies arrives at community colleges nationwide. Here, students, handpicked by Ford and Lincoln Mercury dealers, earn degrees in automotive technology on cars and trucks supplied by Ford. So they can give you a level of service at our dealerships you won't find anywhere else. Ford and Lincoln Mercury Quality Care, where the quality continues.
In this wide world of sports, there is one contest that blends so much color, so much history, and so much excitement that it has become more than a sporting event. It has become an American classic. Welcome to Derby Day on ABC Sports. We'll see golf's greats painting the fairways at the Shell Houston Open. And ABC's Wide World of Sports begins coverage of the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge with a sports masterpiece, the Kentucky Derby, live. It's all Saturday on ABC Sports.
And next month, we've got all the right stuff right here on ABC with star-studded specials, including a salute to Elizabeth Taylor and a powerful lineup of miniseries like Murder in the Heartland, Stephen King's The Tommyknockers, and from Oliver Stone, the event series Wild Palms, plus the best in movies, from first-run originals to blockbusters like Lethal Weapon and Total Recall. Top it off with special episodes from your favorite series, and you've got...
Coming this May, from Stephen King, in the small town of Haven, someone's made a big discovery.
That thing out there is talking to me.
There's something miraculous about it. Touch it. It's gonna change everything.
everything.
We're going to talk about this right now.
Did you betray me like this? Are you ready to become one voice?
Have you ever heard of the Tommy Knockers? Stephen King's The Tommy Knockers, Sunday, May 9th.
Next time, Ross Perot offers his answers to your questions on the economy.
Plus inexpensive ways to brighten up your kitchen, and Matthew Broderick on Good Morning America.
And we're back with Frank Bowles, Noel Cook, and Brian Jenkins. Brian, you were making the point just before the break, and let me be clear, that they felt they couldn't wait any longer, or that there wasn't any point in waiting any longer?
Well, I think the statement was made that waiting longer was futile in that the ultimate outcome would not change. They were at an impasse. And moreover, as I recall from my notes, the statement was also made that waiting was dangerous because it would give somehow further advantages to those people on the inside.
Now, do we not have to at least take into account what happened? If their concern, if their reason for acting was to avoid what they perceive to be the greater danger, then at the very least we have to conclude that they miscalculated, right?
That if it had gone on longer, that it would have gone bad is fortune-telling. It seems to me that a great deal was made of the circumstances that they believed were going on inside that compound, that there was a degradation in the living standard, that there were dead bodies decomposing, that there was raw sewage about, and so forth and so on. Now, these problems are good problems. They're good problems for the negotiator.
Absolutely.
They buy you time. So you're not, if you think things are getting bad inside, that's just a signal to you to continue to let them get worse, and not to try to interrupt the process.
And you should not take into account, as for example the Attorney General pointed out, that she thought this was terrible for the children inside. Raw sewage, rotting bodies, whatever it is you want to point to.
Well, it's better to have a terrible situation than to be dead, I think.
I think even if they got disease, they could be cured. Even if somebody got sick, there's the opportunity for them to be cured. But in this situation, they went to the ultimate. When we put the basic principles together back in 1972, one of the things that my colleague Harvey Schlossberg and I, when we put it together, was we may not make a situation any better, but we don't want to do anything to make it any worse. And I think here, the worst thing that could have happened was that Koresh could have killed everybody in there. In this instance, it would appear that they were pushed to do this based on the reaction to the actions of the law enforcement people.
We have focused all our attention on what happened on April 19th. We have focused none of our attention, and to the degree that they did at the hearing today, I'd like you to how this situation began in the first place, when it was the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms team that went in. What are your conclusions now as to what happened then, whether it had to go down the way it did? Noel, why don't you start on this one?
Well, that appears to have been a complete fiasco. Mr. Higgins was very reluctant to discuss this. Apparently, one of their own public affairs people alerted the press, and they went in there with an entourage of press. They were taking fire, and one could imagine the agents in a situation, we've got to go through with this, and not making a determination about where this thing was going to end up.
Are you serious? Just because the press is there, they would feel they have to go through with it, even though they're under heavy fire?
Look, in the first place, they're maintaining that they were ambushed. Now, an ambush presupposes that you were going into in a stealthy situation, and the people you were approaching didn't know anything about it, and you expected to go through this thing entirely in a safe circumstance, or at least to maintain the initiative as you went forward. Now, if you alert the press the day before, as appears to have happened, that's the story, we don't know to a dead certainty, but that appears to have been what happened, then you can reasonably expect that this is going to get around. And now they are going up to the building fully armed, but they have this press entourage behind them. Now, what is the decision-making point at that point? And why do you persist? Why do you go on?
Brian Jenkins, your thoughts again on that first day, the first action by the ATF.
Well, on the events of that first day, I'm going to have to be cautious here and to say that I think we have to await a more thorough accounting, the type of account that we got of the last day of the episode before at least I can make a judgment about that.
All right. Frank? You want to be cautious, or you got some observations?
Well, my observation is this. I believe it was Mr. Sessions, or you have to correct me on this, either Mr. Sessions or Mr. Higgins said that if they would have attempted to arrest Koresh outside, then the other people inside would have been alerted and they would have lost the element of surprise. I think it was Mr. Higgins. And he also indicated that on the day in question, when they went in on the assault, they became aware that they had lost the element of surprise. So why go further? If you've lost the element of surprise and you know they have all those weapons, and I know it's not an easy call to make, a very, very difficult call, but perhaps sometimes, if nothing else, we've learned, unfortunately, from the deaths of these 4 people, that perhaps there may be a time to pack up and come back tomorrow rather than press ahead.
Noel Cook, we've only got a few seconds left. Your thoughts on the beginning?
I think, first of all, this thing was mishandled from the beginning. It was mishandled at the point at which, because of what happened to the ATF, it was taken out of the hands of the ATF and passed over to the Bureau. And right from the beginning, it's a cardinal error once you have an operation going to distort the line of command and to pass it off to another agency. In this circumstance, they had the ATF down there with 4 fatalities, feeling terrible about that. You had the Bureau coming in, even though I don't think they went in the way the press represented them as doing. It was sort of a look out, let the pros take over. It created a very difficult situation on the ground, and I think from there on it tumbled downhill.
Noel Cook, Brian Jenkins, Frank Bowles, thank you all very much. I'll be back in a moment.
So, did you get my memo?
I'm looking for a memo.
You got 3 o'clock. What time is the 3 o'clock scheduled for now? Let's just untangle this.
Give me that. Meeting? What meeting?
If we reschedule at 2:30 for 4.
I don't think you know what you're doing.
4 o'clock should be coming.
Go in and check. Don't guess, please.
Oh, that was wonderful.
I have to see it.
If a movie got great reviews, you'd go see it, wouldn't you?
Absolutely fantastic.
If everyone kept talking about a book, you'd probably read it. And if Automobile Magazine called this Toyota Camry the best car built in America, you'd give it a test drive, right? The 1993 Toyota Camry. Everything you've heard is true.
What could a minute cost if your 800 service goes down? If you're a player on Wall Street, $910,000. But with us, you're always in the game. Introducing the AT&T 800 service Never Miss a Call Guarantee. Now if there's a problem, we can reroute your calls in less than a second. Sign up for the Never Miss a Call Guarantee. It's the #1 reason AT&T 800 service is always the smartest play. AT&T, the best in the business. Guaranteed.
Boy, I really did it last night. Got drunk, acted stupid, went home with... Who is that? What, am I stupid? How did I do this? Barry began to worry, really worry. What about AIDS? Then he remembered, hey, I'm just a cartoon. I don't even have to shower. Get high, get stupid, get AIDS.
Sunday, it's Schwarzenegger and Stone.
You are not you.
They stole his mind
Your whole life is just a dream.
and reprogrammed his life.
People are trying to kill me.
Now, he wants the truth. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Sharon Stone. A network television premiere. Total Recall. Sunday.
Tomorrow night on Primetime Live, Chris Wallace reports on another congressional junket, this time an all-expense-paid trip to Florida, courtesy of Washington lobbyists. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
If you wish a printed transcript, please send $5 to 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news